TV.
Welcome to KickBack. This is the first hour of our 6-hour mental health marathon. We are so excited to have you join us. This is the 7th year that we've been producing this in partnership with Rogers TV.
Can't believe it, 7 years.
I know.
Wow.
I was talking to Patty the other day and it was like, it's actually been 7 years. I thought it was 5. So here we are. My name is Ben Strasser, and this is my lovely wife, Rachel Strasser.
Hello.
So nice to have you here.
It's wonderful to be here. I love being part of this. It's such a worthy cause and a conversation that needs to happen.
Awesome. And first up, we have, Becca
Becca McLellan.
I know. Thank you so much for being here, Becca. And also Hope Falla. Thank you for being here. We are excited to start this conversation.
Okay.
Becca, kids can fly. I know I saw a stat. It was that 1 in 5 women will experience symptoms of postpartum mood disorders. Can you share a little bit about what Kids Can Fly does?
Yeah, so Kids Can Fly has always tried to fill gaps in the community. Where there's a need, we try to fill it, especially if there's other agencies that aren't able to meet that need. And so mental health for women has become a really big piece of what we do. And we try to create programs that help women regardless of where they're coming from. Our programming really supersedes socioeconomic status. And one thing that's really important is that we don't require that women have a diagnosis, a mental health diagnosis, because there are actually a lot of barriers for women when they're experiencing mental health distress to actually going through all the motions to get a diagnosis. Right. So we just create programming for women who need that support. We keep it so open-ended because there's a lot of women who even have something like postpartum depression, but they don't necessarily see it that way. They just feel like everything's dark and they need help. And so we try to just be there at that stage. We don't require that they jump through a bunch of hoops in order to receive support.
That's amazing.
That is amazing.
Good.
As someone who's gone through postpartum depression, I actually went to my doctor twice and he just said, okay, to me, telling him how I was feeling, and didn't give me any resources or anything. And I actually was living in Brantford at the time and went to some of the programs, and that really helped connecting with other mums.
That's both encouraging and discouraging to hear.
Yeah.
As we know in Ontario, a lot of people do experience barriers to even accessing a doctor. So I think it's great that you had a healthcare practitioner available to you, but it's not shocking that the specific pieces of maternal mental health weren't well understood at that time. It's just a very common problem. Yeah. And so creating programs for any woman is just a way to skip that step and make it easier to access support. Yeah.
So I know Hope was sharing earlier that when she was going through postpartum and just talking about it, when you're in the midst of that postpartum, sometimes it doesn't feel right, or there's even that barrier within to reaching out and talking. And why is it so uncommon to talk about something that is so common?
Well, I think that when we're experiencing distress, we don't necessarily go and say, oh, I'm experiencing distress. This is what I should do, right? It's such an internal emotional process. And so that's the first barrier, is even recognizing it in ourselves. And then the second barrier is usually shame, because I think a lot of us feel like we don't want to be seen as inadequate or faulty, when really that's not the case at all, but we can't help but think that sometimes. So I think shame is a huge barrier. And so the power of actually talking about it, the power of actually talking about mental health, and you know, any kind of mental struggle or emotional struggle
diffuses that shame.
Yeah,
That
breaking down that
perception.
shame barrier.
Yeah.
Because it's so powerful to be sitting in a room and saying, I'm struggling, and to be vulnerable in that situation. That's scary, but to hear someone else saying, me too, all of a sudden, you just actually feel a lot safer and calmer and more ready to receive support that's there for you.
Right. So to anyone who is watching today, to know that you're not alone and it's not uncommon. And if you even have that first instinct within you that you're something's off, things are dark, like you said, but there's this feeling of not wanting to talk about it because you're somehow lacking or less than, you're not alone, and it's very common, and they can access the community at Kids Can Fly to help them navigate that journey.
Yeah, and we have, at Kids Can Fly, we have 2 programs that address maternal mental wellness. So we've got our Parachute program, which is meant for mothers of babies under 12 months. And that is such a group support. It's run by an excellent facilitator named Jane Flinders, who has a ton of experience in this area. And it's also a peer support group. So the women in this group help each other and build lateral relationships that are just so effective. And then we have an additional program called our prenatal program. And in that program, we aim to help women who have extra factors that may influence their wellness after giving birth. And we try to provide them with as much equipping and skills and readiness strategies as possible before they even have their babies and are at greater risk.
I think that's so powerful too, because it's such a wild journey becoming a parent, and I can speak from being a father, but that side of just there's so much unknown going into it, and having that extra little bit of preparation, just even to know that those feelings are not uncommon, and it's not just everybody experiences that, which I think can be like a common stigma around that is, oh, you're just feeling down because you don't get enough rest, when it's so much more than that, right?
So what are some of the factors that might be highlighted to you, to someone who would be at risk for postpartum depression?
One of the really big ones is unplanned pregnancies. So if you weren't expecting to be having a baby that year, that actually adds such a big layer of stress. And other factors, like there are quite a few factors, but another one that's big is if you already experience mental distress, mental illness, you're more likely to have that affect you later.
Postpartum.
And the amount of supports that you have around you are the kind of third really big one. There are other factors that we could get into, but those are 3 of the main ones. Like if you don't have a supportive partner, like if you're doing it alone, that puts you at even greater risk, and so much of it comes down to that stress, that emotional load that you have trying to navigate motherhood. The greater those stress factors, the more at risk you are to struggle. And there is no shame in that. I just want to clarify.
That's right.
Because we've all, like I had an unplanned pregnancy myself, and I found that it was hard, but I at the time, I didn't understand that I wasn't alone, but I do know that now.
And we've got to cut to break, but we will be right back after these messages.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
These guys are the best. That's their whole job.
'Cause I'm fighting for
Get me home to my baby.
I promise.
We do not have a lot of time. Let's go, let's go, let's go!
I'm here. We're in this together.
Chicago Wednesday. New season's premiere January 17th on City TV or stream it on City TV Plus.
Join Carolina Suarez for Tapestry Hall Style, Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m. on Rogers TV.
My name is Chase Nicholas. I am a Mi'kmaq hockey player. Growing up, I always remember my family talking about the Mi'kmaq as the creators of the game of hockey. In grade 7, I did research on Mi'kmaq hockey sticks as the first sticks of the NHL. I found a Mi'kmaq hockey stick made in 1917, the same year the NHL was formed. I was surprised to find out the very stick I was holding was made by my great-great-grandfather, Alexander Cope. In 1934, an elder known as Old Joe Cope wrote a letter to the Halifax Herald claiming the Mi'kmaq created hockey. I found out later that I am a direct descendant of Old Joe Cope. There was a time when Mi'kmaq children were torn from their families and not allowed to speak their language, losing their words and stories. But the stories are coming back to us. Stepping on the ice, I take pride knowing the roots of the game of hockey stem from my ancestors in the Mi'kmaq Nation.
David here, reminding you that Lions TV Bingo is right here on Rogers TV. We've got a new look, a new prize board. We actually have a full card game of $3,500. Indeed, biggest we've ever had. See you soon.
Think it's okay to drive high? Think again. Drug-impaired driving is as illegal as drunk driving, and in Ontario, the penalties are the same. If police suspect you're driving under the influence of drugs of any kind, or a combination of drugs and alcohol, and you fail a roadside test, your license will be suspended immediately for up to 30 days. You'll pay a penalty of $198. And you can be charged with a criminal offense of impaired driving, the same as alcohol. Driving high is never okay.
Welcome back to KickBack. I'm joined with Rachel,
Hello.
Becca, and Hope. Again, thank you both so much for being here. Really, we're talking about postpartum depression. We're talking about Kids Can Fly and the services that they offer. Can you share about how the audience can find Kids Can Fly services and access them?
So all of our information is on our website, which is handy, kidscanfly.ca. And what you'd look for on there is our parachute program and our prenatal program. And both of these have information on how you access those. Our parachute program is a drop-in, which is fantastic. So you can just try it out. You don't have to register. The prenatal program is a little bit more of a commitment where you sign up for a variety of sessions. But that one comes with free food usually. So
Nice.
It's a nice perk.
That is a nice perk.
And they are in multiple locations, right? Like it's not just in one place, you offer it in a few different locations?
That's right. So our parachute program currently operates at the St. George Public Library and downtown Brantford at Margot's Place, which is in St. Andrew's Church.
Okay.
And both locations are currently running, but you should always check our website just to make sure that you have the most up-to-date information, because once in a while we switch just to access different communities.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Becca. And I love that the prenatal yoga is part of what you offer at Kids Can Fly, and how wonderful that is just to help mothers understand the power of pause and the power of a breath, and how that ripples not only over their mental health, but down into like the growing fetus, and it can affect their relationship even after the baby is born. And Hope, you are a yogi and someone who has navigated postpartum depression. Can you speak to how some of the tools that you had in your toolbox helped you navigate your journey? Because I know you've had some very low moments, but you also have a lot of moments of definite resiliency and kind of getting your head above the clouds.
Yeah, so I'd say, I'm just gonna rewind a little bit. It all kind of started when I had endometriosis, which I didn't get a diagnosis of until I was 22. Again, doctors missed it, just kind of threw the birth control pill at me at an age that I was really too young to be on anything like that. Masking the symptoms and making things worse, including my mental health throughout my adolescent years, which caused all sorts of issues growing up. I finally got a diagnosis, and I was married and we decided, well, I always wanted kids. Yes. Todd flip-flopped. But he ended up saying, well, if it happens, it happens. So 2 years later, I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe I'm going to be having issues because I have endometriosis, and I know some women do. And so that was like very challenging to go through, and definitely felt like depression going through that, and it spurred on a healing journey for me to deepen my practice of yoga, meditation, mindfulness, focus more on my nutrition, and coming back to these practices I had kind of been slowly building on in my teen years and early 20s really helped me get through that patch. And I think going into those healing journeys, as well as different spiritual ceremonies like womb healing and ancestral healing, like you were talking about, we can hold on to the emotions of our mother when we are carried by her. That can actually happen through epigenetics for generations. We can hold on to traumas from our grandmothers. That is even. True. Yes. So I did spiritual work to kind of work through that as well, and just all of these different practices and modalities together helped to bring healing to all levels of my body, mind, soul, allowing space for new beautiful life to grow inside of me. And then a couple months later, after I did a silent meditation retreat, womb healing, and had been already doing all these other things, I found out I was pregnant and had a beautiful baby boy at home.
That's incredible, and it sounds like stress contributes to so many things in our society. And in yoga, we often use the analogy of when you begin to practice mindfulness pieces and move your body, you're moving energy, you're bringing your body, mind back into coherence, where you're going to leak less energy, so your body quite literally, mentally and physically has more energy to put forth into that heart intention that you have, which was having a child. And it just goes to show the power of, number one, having those tools in your toolbox, and then being consistent with them. And also, it sounds like you had a community of support, or people that you could reach out to support you.
I kind of built that for myself. Like, I honestly didn't really have it. I had been living in England and had only been back here for a couple of years, so I was building my community. But you know, when you're in that depression, what I found is you reach a point where you're either going to keep spiraling down, or you're going to do stuff to lift yourself up and take action for yourself and for your life. And that's what I've done a couple times. Because the other just isn't an option for me.
Wasn't an option. What are 2 or 3 modalities, specific things that really helped you with not only your postpartum depression, but even getting pregnant, navigating endometriosis and the diagnosis? And
the number one thing, which I think you will probably agree with, is breath. Focusing on the breath. Like,
maybe you want to take a deep breath. Yes. Okay,
it's just so healing. Like, when I had endometriosis, like, I would have days where I couldn't get out of bed. Like, my husband would have to help me use the toilet. I'm in my early 20s. It's like so awful. And getting through that, I saw you doing a Wim Hof session at the studio. I was doing Wim Hof breathing, and that actually helped me deal with pains when I was having such awful pains. Also helped me deal with grief. Also helped me deal with postpartum depression. And when I had postpartum depression, it was like in the middle of COVID. And like, I know for so many women, the occurrences of that, it skyrocketed because of the isolation and no community around you to help support you. So eventually I got back to my practice, and the one thing I started with was connecting with my breath.
So breath.
And then moving my body mindfully.
At Up Yoga, we talk about movement as medicine, and you'll catch us saying a lot that when you move your body, you shift your life's energy forward, and it's so much more than a workout. If anything, the physical benefits are secondary to the spiritual and energetic benefits of moving and breathing.
When
So
I started
rapid
yoga when I
movement.
was 16, I
Yes.
started because I wanted abs and I wanted to look great. And then I quickly realized, like, wow, this actually makes me feel really calm and peaceful, and I love it. Not for how it's making my body look, which it did help, but with how it made my mind feel, and that was just so amazing, and I fell in love with it then.
That's beautiful.
And
So,
sorry, we've got about a minute left, and I know you wanted to mention your upcoming fertility
yes,
workshop
your
that you
fertility
have.
workshop.
Okay, yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, just a quick brief, and then we'll make sure we pull it up. Where can individuals find out more about your fertility workshop?
Okay, so I'm on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Hope's Tiny Temple, and I will be sharing about my upcoming fertility retreat, which will include yoga, meditation, mindfulness, as well as womb healing.
Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us. We really appreciate your time, and we'll be right back after this.
Canada's Got Talent is getting ready for the biggest season ever.
874,624, 800.
With the biggest cash prize in Canadian TV history.
Howie, what are you doing?
874,626.
Rogers wrote a $1 million check for this season's CGT winner.
Yes! It's the $1 million season.
Thank you, Rogers.
Canada's Got Talent. This March on City TV.
Hey folks, it's me, Giovanni Petiti, the host of Not Tonight. It's the new late night talk show right here on Rogers TV. We got fabulous guests, a lot of laughs. It's just like the Jimmy Kimmel Show. If you order the Jimmy Kimmel Show on Wish. So join me Sunday at 10 o'clock right here on Rogers TV. Nice.
Public transit, garbage pickup, parks and recreation programs, snow removal on your street. How can you stay informed about these and other important local services? Tune to City Council coverage on Rogers TV. See your community leaders at work on Rogers TV City Council coverage.
Personal finance show that dares to ask those money questions you've always wanted to. Join Mike Bregueth when he talks with experts on all aspects of money. Money Matters with Mike Bregueth, Thursdays at 8 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Welcome back to KickBack. Again, we are so glad to have you here. My name is Ben.
And my name is Rachel.
And we are now joined by Hailey Skitch. Hailey,
Welcome, Hailey.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
And sharing your story. Can you share a little bit about what you're going through and what you've been through? And I just think it's so awesome that you've come on to share your story in the hopes, and that's what we're all here for, is to kind of generate that conversation and really show that it's okay to not be okay, and to share those things, right?
And there's so much power in personal stories, and and it takes a lot of courage to share. But by sharing, we diffuse any stigmas, and you really empower people. So could you share with us about your personal story?
Yes, so thank you for having me. I mean, I've struggled with a few things over these last few years, but it all kind of started when I had my son, and postpartum became a part of my life. My son is now 7, so postpartum has kind of turned into full-blown depression at this point now. So I've just been working to manage some of those, and really accepting everything that kind of has happened, and allowing myself to kind of grow and learn as I go.
Yeah.
Was once your son had come, was it like an immediate change for you, or was it gradual?
It was almost an immediate change, one that I didn't really want to accept. This has been probably the hardest part, is like accepting the diagnosis of postpartum and having to believe that that was true, because it's not something I thought I would ever go through or experience. Not something I ever had in my youth before, so this was something brand new for me. But it was almost immediately after it happened. It took probably about 4 months to officially get the diagnosis.
Okay. So you did get an official diagnosis
I did,
for it?
yeah. So I did have to go see the doctor, and I had a few other, postpartum brought on a few other things, like my anxiety and a little bit of an eating disorder kind of stemmed from stuff like that. So yes, it kind of happened right away, but I officially got my diagnosis 4 months after he was born.
I think that's something that's not talked about enough, is that people, when there is a baby on the way, it's happy, it's exciting, it's great, it's wonderful. Nobody really tells you that there's this chance for something to happen, right? And you just, it just kind of knocks you off your feet when something like that does happen, right? So it changes everything.
Yeah. There was no real conversation before the baby had been born of prep work I should be doing in case of anything, if anything were to happen. There was just, this is what you should expect, that's it. So then once I started feeling these certain things, it really wasn't something that I enjoyed.
So what is your son's name?
His name is Benjamin.
So when Benjamin was born, you started to feel these changes, and you knew something was off, but you said you were not right away willing to accept it.
Yes.
What in your journey helped you accept it, and then what steps were, I guess, given to you, or did you receive help, or what supports did you find that helped you move through the acceptance of it, and then part of the navigating the healing journey?
Right. I am still 7 years into this journey, and I will be honest, I am still not fully accepting of any of the stuff that has really happened. But once I started to really recognize that this wasn't going to go away, and that this was going to be a part of my everyday life, I really, once it didn't go away, that's when I realized, like, maybe I need to take steps to do better, or to try something different, because the things I had previously done historically were no longer working.
Right.
So I reached out to a doctor.
Yes.
I reached out to therapists.
Yeah.
I've done some programs, and I've utilized the resources that have been given to me, but I would not have gotten there if I didn't ask for help.
Right.
So it did take a while for me to officially accept the diagnosis, but once I did ask for help, and I was luckily met with options.
That's great that you were able to ask for help. And I know when talking with Rebecca, sometimes that first ask is, and just the willingness to be able to talk about it, there's a lot of barriers, and one of them is shame around, well, just shame.
Just shame in general.
Just shame in general. It doesn't, there doesn't need to be anything added to that. And I know I've experienced that too, and it's something that we all experience. It's very common. And I think that community is really powerful in helping diffuse that and embrace that compassion for the journey over perfection and having to have it all figured out. And yeah, so community, where are you at with community now? And your journey has evolved over the last 7 years.
Yeah.
What is helping you today?
Staying mindful.
Yeah.
Continuing to learn to accept the things that I cannot change.
Yeah.
This is who I am now, and I need to accept that version of myself. And then the things that I continue to do is therapy. Therapy has been the biggest, support, allowing me to work through my emotions, my feelings, any issues that I may have with support, and I don't have to do it alone. I mean, we all know that we're not alone, but it's nice to feel like we're not alone at the same time.
The feeling of community and support is like nothing else.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
So I co-own Up Yoga and Wellness, and my business partner was in paramedicine for many years and had 7 months of chronic anxiety, and did everything that she could, checked all the boxes. She was a yoga teacher also, so she had the mindfulness piece. Yep. And one day she was on the computer and this video popped up, and it was an EFT tapping video, and she did it for 3 minutes, and for the first 3 minutes in 7 months, she had this feeling of relief from her anxiety, and she felt just herself and her body. And so she did more research on it. And the reason I'm sharing this story with you is because Jill and I very firmly believe that you have to go on a bunch of first dates with different therapies or modalities before you find something that really suits you, because we're all bio-individuals and we'll all need different supports at different times in our lives. So it's really wonderful to hear that you have found talk therapy is so incredibly helpful. What would you say to someone who is fresh off of becoming a new parent and experiencing postpartum depression? What advice would you give them?
Talk about it.
Yeah.
Talk about it. You have to talk about it, and don't be afraid to ask for help. You are not alone. You are not the only ones feeling these ways.
Yeah.
And there is support out there. Taking a time to accept and sit with these new feelings and this new version of yourself is also really important. Silence with yourself. You are the only person you'll ever live with for your entire life. So learning to listen to yourself and trust your intuition and your gut is a really big one.
I love that.
Thank you so much for joining us, Hailey.
Yes.
We really appreciate you taking the time to come in and share your story.
Thank you.
We will be right back after this break.
January 18th on City TV.
Let's get to work.
The wait
Remember me?
is over.
Fight fire with fire.
Looks like we're going for a ride.
Law & Order Thursday returns with all new episodes.
NYPD, show me your hands. Don't move.
We're gonna get this guy together, like we always do.
Law & Order, SVU, and Organized Crime. New seasons premiere January 18th on City TV or stream it on City TV Plus.
Hey guys, Steph here from The Cruise TV, the show where we talk about the people and stories behind the coolest cars on the road. Join us on Sundays at 8 p.m.
For frank discussion on Canadian politics and issues that matter to you, tune in to Addressing the Issue with Andy Streisfeld, Fridays at 6:30 on Rogers TV.
I was born and raised in Musqueam First Nation territory by my mother, who spoke Hunkaminam to me. As a child, I ceased using my mother tongue, as to use any language other than English was considered not being Canadian, so I was told. The old people came to me in a dream and reminded me of who I am and where I come from. I have reawakened. My roots are strong, and I'm no longer a silent speaker. My language tells me where I'm from. It defines me and guides me to teach others to learn and understand our culture and traditions. A gift for those in the present and the unborn generation. What was lost is found. What was asleep has awakened. My blood is here, and I am complete. I have returned home.
Join Carolina Suarez for Tapestry Hall Style, Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m. on Rogers TV.
This is a perfectly healthy child. What's unhealthy are birth alerts, a racist practice that may stop this Indigenous mother from going home with her newborn. Become an ally. Rise above racism in healthcare.
Welcome back to KickBack again. My name is Ben.
I'm Rachel.
And we are now joined by Kristen Stemmler.
Welcome, Kristen. So good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
And we're excited for you to share your personal story. Again, that's what today is all about, is sharing stories and just showing people that they're not alone, and just that there are things that you can do to help, and there are others that are working through whatever they've been dealt. And we're so thankful to have you in the studio today.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Kristen, can you share a little bit about what it means to be bipolar?
So I like to stay positive and look at it as being the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Okay. So I can, experience both sides of the fence with this, mental health issue, but it leads me to try new things. Sometimes without realizing. So it's a pusher in my daily life that causes some difficulties, but you have to stay focused on the positive aspect of it. And it's about enjoying all aspects of life.
What you just said reminds me of, where your mind goes, your energy flows. And before the break, we were chatting about, being an entrepreneur and running a business. And there are days where you could think about all the things that are going wrong, or risk assess all of the things that could go wrong. Or you could focus on all the things that could go really, really well. And we were just talking about taking risks, and you've had some real success in your business recently, charcuterie, etc. And I'm curious to know, just to jump right into how your business and the pursuit of becoming a business owner has helped you navigate.
So it's been difficult, but it's been really worth it. It's been a rock, it's been a foundation for me to kind of ground and root myself into something and then grow from there and redefine who I am and what being bipolar is for me. It is a little bit different for everyone, although we may experience euphoria and mania and depression. There's still all the time outside of that, and putting my time into work and seeing success is what keeps me stable. So I appreciate my job, and I appreciate the opportunities, and people see that in me, which helps me keep going.
At what point in life were you diagnosed as bipolar?
About 7 years ago, actually. Kind of later. Everybody knew when we found out, when I told everybody, I was like, so I'm diagnosed bipolar, and my whole family's like, yeah, we're not surprised. So, but things were different, it wasn't really talked about.
Right. What are some of the signs that you noticed, or maybe you had a physician that was helping you, or a counselor? What are some of the signs?
Extreme risk-taking, yeah. So making really bold, large choices without considering consequences.
Okay.
At 15, I told my dad I want to go to France on an exchange program for 4 months, and he sent me, and the teachers were like, she's not showing any signs of being scared. She's really excited. Like the other students going are very nervous. Kristen doesn't show any of those signs. And they still sent me to France. And when I got there, I was like, oh, wow, what did I do? But I'm here, and I stayed, and it was an amazing experience. But the choices leading up to that were very euphoric led.
Right. And so that would be hard for yourself to diagnose this if you don't understand the consequences of what you're doing, right?
So what my mind's going through.
Right. And that must have been difficult being, like you said, diagnosed later in life. What did that mean for you?
So just a lifetime of what I thought were amazing choices, very terrible choices. Bad choices with long-term effects that I hadn't considered before I made those choices.
Right.
So over the last few years, now recognizing before I make a big decision, I actually have to evaluate what my thought process is, and I have to put myself into a situation. I force myself to think of consequences, and it doesn't always help. I don't always see possible outcomes, and then I am pleasantly surprised. But I'm more aware now. I can recognize that thought process.
You have these tools now in your toolbox.
Exactly.
That you can, I guess, more easily employ every time you're faced with that opportunity to kind of weigh the pros and the cons. And what would you say to someone who is more recently being diagnosed with bipolar disorder?
Don't be scared to find resources and tools on your own.
Yeah.
We do have a pretty reasonable healthcare system that offers a lot of tools and resources, but they aren't going to be spoon-fed to us. So it is my responsibility to control who I am and how I put myself out to the world. So a downfall to being bipolar is maintaining friendships, relationships, work life. That's not everyone else's fault around me. That's for me to control. So allowing myself to make smarter choices and treat people better around me, and being aware of just my actions even in this conversation right now, to control that and leave it on a positive note and see the opportunity from it rather than finding the negative and then spiraling and creating problems and so on.
You have such a positive purview of being bipolar and the way that you navigate it. I think from just listening to you today, you've discovered a lot about yourself through the journey over the last few years since being diagnosed. And I sense you've discovered that any kind of mental health and navigating any kind of mental health is hard, but you're also a lot stronger and more resilient than I feel you've ever been. It's almost like you can see the negative, but you can also see the opportunity that's been given you to grow and learn.
And that's the benefit of, once again, being on both sides of the fence. The negative's always going to be there, no matter what. You can't see black without white or cold without hot. And that's me. To me, that's all of that is being bipolar. But focusing on the good and turning a downfall into an opportunity is completely doable and in our control, and we just have to do it. There's no excuse.
There's a lot of good work to be done, often hard work, but as humans, we don't grow, our immune systems don't grow unless our immune system is challenged. Our muscles don't grow.
Oh, that's so true.
Unless they're challenged, and we don't learn new things unless we first go through that cognitive dissonance or that zone of proximal development. So as humans, we're kind of wired to do hard things. Even at the studio, we have a cold plunge. And it's a mental game to get into that thing. But once you get out, you feel like you could climb Mount Everest.
It's so true. I do love cold plunges.
And thank you so much for joining us, Kristen. We really appreciate you coming into the studio. And we'll be right back after this.
Kitchener's perfect music mix is on Chime 96.7. So every song is someone's favorite song. On Chime 96.7.
Remember me?
Let's get to work. Just like old times. Looks like we're going for a ride.
We're doing this my way.
Hey folks, it's me, Giovanni Petiti, the host of Not Tonight. It's the new late night talk show right here on Rogers TV. We got fabulous guests, a lot of laughs. It's just like the Jimmy Kimmel Show. If you order the Jimmy Kimmel Show on Wish. So join me Sunday at 10 o'clock right here on Rogers TV. Nice.
This is a brain in urgent need of mental health care. But because 3 out of every 4 Indigenous people experience racism in healthcare, she may not get the help she needs. Become an ally. Rise above racism in healthcare.
I am Gagweg. My name means everything.
Tom Longboats.
I am Wolf Clan, Onondaga Nation. I've run many different races. I've run to survive and to be free. I've run to win for honor.
His people might be lazy, but this one's damn fast.
My people respected our runners, people who carried important messages from village to village.
I need a guide to the next post. Dispatch carrier, sir. I can get you there.
God sakes, man, slow down. Who do you think I am, Tom Longboat?
No, sir. I am.
Running makes me feel alive. It's everything.
Tom Longboat was the first Indigenous person to win the Boston Marathon. He ran his way to international fame and became an inspiration to generations of athletes.
You're watching an interesting local show on Rogers TV and you want to know more. That's when you head to RogersTV.com. Our website provides more information about our programs, our hosts, our schedule, and about how you too can get involved with Rogers TV. Visit us online at RogersTV.com.
Aging Well brings you conversations with experts to help empower your golden years with enthusiasm and optimism. Don't miss Aging Well with Angela and Alice Liu, Thursdays at 7:30 p.m.
Welcome back to KickBack. I'm so glad that you've joined us today. My name is Ben.
Hi, my name is Rachel.
And today we are joined by Juliana Weberman. Thank you so much for Thank you for joining us.
Being here. Yes.
And I know you're sharing a personal story today, and I really appreciate, we really appreciate the individuals that come on and share their personal journeys and adventures and experiences in the hopes of helping others.
Yeah.
Right? That's what it's all about.
So much power in the sharing of a personal story to destigmatize, to diffuse the shame that's associated with talking about these things. So share with us, Juliana, about your story.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the kind of driving factor why I reached out and said, I'd love to share my story for that exact reason, because I feel like it was something that it was sort of shameful, and as I've gotten older, I'm realizing, you know what, like, I'm not alone on this, and having to have navigated some of those processes as far as finding resources and supports and stuff was challenging, because I felt like nobody was really talking about it. So I just think, like, sharing stories and experiences and just can provide that, sort of, I guess,
you're not alone.
Yeah, that reassurance that, like, you know what, there are resources out there. You just kind of have to know where to look for them. And I just wish that barrier wasn't so difficult to sort of get over. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I've sort of struggled with anxiety and depression in some shape or form for most of my life. I wouldn't necessarily say that I had a name for it until like maybe my 20s. And how it's manifested as I've gotten older has changed. It's not, I don't think it doesn't look the same for me. And sometimes I think it doesn't necessarily look what like typical depression or panic attacks would look like. I always like say I don't have the luxury of like falling apart anymore because I have a family and a mortgage and you know, you got to keep things together. So the way that it manifests and the way I cope with it has changed a lot.
So you have a daughter.
I do.
And I know becoming a parent, your past and your experience with depression and anxiety, even before you had a diagnosis in your 20s, because I know you spoke to experiencing it when you were in your teens and not wanting to get a diagnosis or even talk to somebody about it. How was your experience then different from your experience now? And how does it affect the way you parent, and what tools do you use?
I mean, it's not a knock against my parents, but they come from a different generation where it just wasn't talked about, you know, and it's not that it didn't exist before then, it's just that, you know, you kept it to yourself, you pulled yourself up by the bootstraps and you just moved on, right?
Kept going,
Just kept going, like. And so having my daughter 7 years ago and then like watching her grow up now, I'm noticing, and my husband too, we both notice things that she does that we're now suddenly realizing, oh my gosh, we used to do that when we were kids. And sort of, you know, having that diagnosis and now being able to like look back with that hindsight and that clarity, I'm realizing like I just didn't have the words for it back then, but I was a terribly anxious kid. I can remember, you know, several, you know, very clear incidences where I was like, oh man, like I was very anxious and concerned about that, but I never talked about it. I just sort of like internalized it and kept it to myself because no one else was talking about it, and I didn't want to seem like I was overreacting or worrying about nothing, and so I just kept it to myself. And it's made me a little bit more hyper aware with my daughter now, and I want her to feel like she can come and talk to us about anything.
Absolutely.
And we've tried to, you know, talk openly about, you know, whether I'm taking medication and for what, or if I'm having a rough day and not dealing so great. We're very transparent about that with her because I want her to realize like this is normal. It's nothing to be ashamed about. And if you're feeling like this or you're worried about something, you can
talk about it.
You can come to us and talk to us and we'll help you. We'll figure out a way to deal with it, right? It's just, and again, not a knock on my parents, but
just a different time.
A different time.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
What are some tools or activities that you love to do with your daughter when you are noticing that she is experiencing nervousness or anxiety?
Yeah, so we try to like, you know, we spend a lot of time together. She's an only child.
Yeah.
Obviously the last 3 years with the pandemic, we spent a lot of time together. But yeah, I mean, we just try and like, you know, we have a lot of, she's a pretty girly girl, so we'll do a lot of crafts and I find sometimes I can't address it head on. I have to just sort of, you know, keep it conversational and, you know, we might be doing a craft or maybe, you know, we're watching a movie or we're painting our nails or something. And it's more conversational. I'm not necessarily.
You're just there to support her and ready for when it does come out.
Right. And it sometimes doesn't happen right away. Like we might just do a craft and then, you know, go off and do something else. But then later that night, you know, we're like reading the story in bed or whatever, and then she'll be like, can I talk to you or can I ask a question? And then that's when it comes out. It's almost like she needs time to process, and then we'll have a conversation about it.
Children are amazing that way.
Yeah, it's just, you know, you can't force it, but she knows. I feel like so far she knows that we're a safe space for us.
I feel like the whole process of what you just explained to me, we call at the studio holding space for people.
Yes.
You're just holding space for her to feel safe.
Yep.
And kind of encapsulated by your presence, which Sometimes just getting presents. I know Theo, when we don't have presents with him, our 3.5-year-old, he's like, Mommy! Pay attention to me right now.
And it can't always be on like our schedule, right? Like even if I notice that something might be bothering her, or if I'm noticing behaviors where she's feeling anxious or she's kind of getting a little bit clingy, and I'm like, where is this coming from? You know, I can't force it. Like I can try and address it, but sometimes it doesn't go anywhere, and I just have to drop it and leave it, and we go on and we do something else, or homework, dinner, whatever, and then
it comes out.
But it sets the tone, because then it comes out later. It almost always ends up coming up within a day or two or something,
really beautiful,
you know?
about that presence that you offer and the creative outlets. I think creativity is something that's really helpful for anxiety and depression. And just making it common practice in your house to talk about when you're not okay, and that it's okay not to be okay. And what a wonderful way to parent and to shift that generational pattern.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just that perspective and mindset, right?
Absolutely.
We've got about 1.5 minutes left before we have to go for this hour. But what would you say to somebody that maybe is watching at home and might be feeling down or experiencing some symptoms of anxiety or depression? What would you tell them?
Just that there's resources out there, and that it can be challenging sometimes to tap into them or to know where to start. That's one of the great things. I think social media has like lots of downsides, but there's lots of really good positive things. And one of the things that I've learned over the last handful of years is that there's a lot of really great online resources out there that don't cost anything. It's just a matter of taking the time to look into them and then finding those spaces. And I belong to like an ADHD support group that's online. It's based out of Arizona, of all places. And
isn't that amazing?
It's been a huge game changer for me to have this like group of people that kind of understands my challenges and what I'm dealing with, and we check in weekly. And I kind of always felt like I was doing it on my own and just sort of bumbling through, and now I feel like I have that community and support where even if I am struggling, I have that space that I can go back and ask for advice and help and stuff. So I would start with just absolutely you're not alone, but that there are resources out there, and it doesn't have to just be medication or therapy. It can take a lot of different shapes and ways to do it.
Well, and thank you so much for joining us today, Juliana. We are going to be going to break now, and join us for the next hour of Kickback.
We'll see you soon.
Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.
I don't care what the law is. I will never be a slave. That word, I hate it. It rests on my tongue like